If I had to describe Red Dead Redemption 2 in one word, it would be triumph. Released all the way back in 2018, it's one of the best video games I've ever played. My most recent playthrough was a few years ago, but lately I started getting recommended random clips, and let's just say I yearned for the Wild West again. So about a month ago, I decided to boot up the game on my PC and fire it up on my 120-inch projector, and honestly, this might be the definitive way to experience Red Dead 2. After spending well over 100 hours completely immersed, soaking in countless sunsets, train robberies, and gut-wrenching story beats, I have a lot I want to say. This video isn't going to be just a nostalgic revisit, it's a deep dive into why I love Red Dead Redemption 2 and how it holds up today, and why I think it remains a timeless masterpiece. Because Triumph isn't just about sales, critical acclaim, or winning Game of the Year for that matter. It's a game that dares to be slow in an industry obsessed with instant gratification. It's about characters and stories that feel more human than real life at sometimes, a world that is living and breathing with meaning, and a finale that hits harder after every playthrough. For me, Triumph is seeing Arthur Morgan stare off at the sun, and somehow all these years later, still having something new to say. Red Dead Redemption 2's journey to release was a masterclass in building up hype and excitement, and it once again proved that the more time the Rockstar takes to give us new information, the more anticipation it builds. This approach is the Rockstar special is what I call it. They've always been known to kind of take an approach similar to this, and they're doing the same exact thing for GTA 6. Back in 2010, shortly after the release of Red Dead 1, the team at Rockstar started working on the initial concept of RDR2, which is crazy to think about considering GTA 5 released a short 3 years after Red Dead Redemption 1 launched. I have no idea how we went from getting a new game every few years to having to wait nearly a decade, and in some cases over a decade for a new entry in some of my favorite games, but alas, here we are. From what I've gathered, the development for Red Dead 2 didn't officially kick off until around 2013, after GTA 5's initial release date. Development on Red Dead Redemption 2 really seemed like it was Rockstar's chance to truly redefine how they wanted to tell stories, as well as, evolve gaming as a whole like they do. Red Dead Redemption 2's development was a massive undertaking involving thousands of people across multiple Rockstar studios. I think the biggest hurdle they faced with RDR2 was the complete overhaul of the Rage engine, which is known as the Rockstar Advanced Game Engine, which they pushed to the absolute limit for this game. The hype for Red Dead 2 really began on October 16th when Rockstar Games posted a simple tweet that showcased the Rockstar logo against a blood red image. This of course sent the entire world into a frenzy. I really thought that this was all we were going to get from them for a while, but then the next day came around at 7:59 in the morning. A second tweet had hit the timeline, but this time it was made even more clear that they were teasing something Red Dead Redemption related, showcasing a silhouette of outlaws. I remember being so hyped about this. This was honestly such a fun time to be scrolling Twitter, and if you compare it to nowadays on Twitter, it doesn't even compare. Everyone was talking about this game, but surely that was all Rockstar would show, right? I don't need to set an alarm for the next day at 8 a.m. in the morning, right? Well, I did just in case, and boy did that alarm hit different. The next day passed, and Rockstar posted yet another image, but this time with the official confirmation that the game is indeed Red Dead Redemption 2, and they attached a release date of fall 2017, and in the image they told us that the full trailer would be coming Thursday, October 20th, which that trailer offered a glimpse into the incredibly detailed world that Rockstar was crafting. However, the road to launch isn't a Red Dead road without its bumps. Rockstar Games delayed the game first to spring 2018, and then they moved it again to its final release date of October 26th, 2018, with the main reason being they needed additional time for polish to ensure that the experience lived up to ours and their lofty expectations. However, you'd think that these delays would be a cause for concern, but it was quite the contrary. It only seemed to build up the hype and anticipation. The rest of the marketing campaign was a slow but steady drip feed of news. A second trailer dropped in September 2017 where they introduced the game's protagonist, Arthur Morgan, and the Vanderlyn gang. Cut to May of 2018 where we got the third trailer that once again brought us even deeper into the game's narrative and hinted at some of the internal conflicts that the game would go through. As Red Dead Redemption 2's release date got closer, Rockstar ramped up its marketing efforts, plastering huge posters and dropping gameplay trailers that showed off the game's various mechanics and the amazing open world that I'll be detailing a lot later. Now, while the development and marketing for this game were mostly positive, the game did, however, have its controversies, specifically regarding the company culture as it related to game development crunch. Now, this is, of course, an issue that spanned across the entire development industry. It seemed like nearly every developer had a problem with crunch time and, development crunch. Reports were released that Rockstar in particular had a big problem with dev crunch, with some reports alleging that Rockstar employees were working upwards of 100 hours a week. Now, like many other developers at the time, some defended the crunch, but other employees described that as a bad working environment, which this of course sparked the greater discussion throughout the entire industry about the human cost of creating such massive games. But it's one that I thought was really necessary. Now, despite all the controversies surrounding Rockstar and its crunch culture, the release of Red Dead Redemption 2 was insanely successful. The game generated $725 million in its opening weekend. It broke sales records, surpassing the lifetime sales of Red Dead 1 in just 2 short weeks. The game also launched to critical acclaim, with critics praising the story, realistic characters, open world, and of course, the insane level of detail. At the heart of Red Dead Redemption 2's triumph is the game's story, which this game's story isn't just good, it's unforgettable. It's the kind of narrative that is a bit slow at times, but it deliberately sneaks up on you subtly until you realize, oh wait, I probably should be more careful at a certain ranch in New Hanover. The thing I love the most about Red Dead 2's story is how it's not just about what happens, it's about how the game makes you feel after the credits roll. The idea of playing a Red Dead Redemption game without John Marston at the helm was a bit risky, but my gosh did it pay off. The game doesn't make you love the gang of outlaws you're surrounded by, but throughout the story, Arthur made sure I cared about them. He really was the glue that kept things together, and taking matters into your own hands time and time again on behalf of your crew. The weight of the decisions you make slowly starts to settle in, whether it's collecting debts, breaking somebody out of jail, or trying to keep Dutch's delusional dream alive. And with my most recent playthrough, I really felt Arthur's conflict grow with every single step. Like, I really feel like if you play the game for the first time, like, you kind of get it like subtly, but on a second and even third or fourth playthrough, you could really see the moments of like, oh, this is how it's happening and this is why, and it's done like so beautifully. Every chapter of Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't just a new location or a set piece for missions, it's a turning point in the narrative. So with that in mind, I'd like to dig a bit deeper and discuss what makes each chapter so impactful. Chapter 1. Red Dead Redemption 2's narrative is told across 6 main chapters. The game begins in the snow-covered mountains of Ambarino. The Vanderlyn gang is on the run after a job in Blackwater that didn't go the gang's way. And due to those events, the gang retreated into the mountains to go into hiding and seek shelter. But with conditions that are awful, they're in the middle of a snow-covered mountain with little food. They're freezing and just not having a good time at all. The intro starts off with Arthur Morgan, Dutch, and Micah in search of a shelter, which they found in a nearby mining town called Coulter, which becomes the temporary place to settle. The trio then goes to a nearby home, the Adler Ranch, where they find the O'Driscoll gang members, where this is where we meet Sadie Adler, who Dutch and Arthur rescue after her husband was killed. Cut to later on in chapter 1, Arthur Morgan heads out to look for one of the missing members of the gang, the one and only John Marston. One quick note, if you haven't played Red Dead Redemption 1 or 2, I really need you to play this game in order. Do not start with Red Dead 1, go with Red Dead 2 first, and then play the first game. But back to the story, John Marston is discovered near the top of the mountain, where he looks like he's in pretty bad shape, injured and frostbitten. After being attacked by wolves, our character bails out John. We take him on our back and we carry him back to the shelter. Jump to a bit later in chapter 1, Dutch, Arthur, and Micah then head out to investigate a train robbery opportunity. The train they ambush and rob was a Leviticus Cornwall train. This train robbery really sparked our first big feud that will eventually come back and bite the gang. The first chapter of Red Dead Redemption 2 for some people is slow. There's even some division among some individuals on whether or not it was a good prologue, which I'll say this straight up. Chapter 1 is incredible. It sets the tone and the pacing of the game perfectly. It introduces the player to the type of tension the gang will face throughout the rest of the narrative, as well as immediately display the themes of survival and how important loyalty is. The cold open is literally just that, a cold open. It teaches you the core mechanics, but its goal really is about just immersing you in this cold, cruel world. If you don't enjoy the first chapter of this game, 1, you might be brain broken, and 2, you probably just are not going to enjoy this game. Like, let's be real. So like, do some soul searching and play it again, because I promise it doesn't disappoint. After surviving the harsh conditions of the snowy mountains of Coulter, Dutch and his gang moved east and set up camp in a place called Horseshoe Overlook, which I absolutely love this name. It's a stark contrast to the first chapter. It's not a frostbitten wasteland anymore. It's actually quite a cozy location near the town of Valentine in the state of New Hanover. This is where things start to open up for the player. You truly see the world building here, those vast and sprawling landscapes and the massive open world that is finally revealed to the player, which I'll speak more about the world building later on in the video, but just look at this. It's perfection. Chapter 2 is really about rebuilding the gang. They've been down in the dumps, but now they get the time to, kind of get up good. Our character Arthur and multiple members of the gang begin to start integrating themselves into New Valentine. Arthur is able to take on multiple jobs, one being a debt collector for Leopold Strauss, which starts to show the true nature of the gang and Arthur Morgan. He's not just some pushover, he's a force not to be toyed with. What starts as simple shakedown eventually goes a bit bad, especially when he collects money from Thomas Downs. If you know, you know. I love this part of the game. In my most recent playthrough, I did my best to slow roll this section and do as many side activities and exploration as possible. You also start to build a connection to various members of the gang, one of them being Lenny, which I have a confession here. In my 6 or 7 playthroughs of Red Dead Redemption 2, I still haven't been able to complete one mission of the game. And if you remember the mission where you're getting drunk with Lenny, but then you have to actually go find him, I still haven't been able to complete this mission. I don't know, there's something about the game looking super distorted is really nauseating. So literally every playthrough I do on Red Dead 2, I go get my little brother and I say, hey bro, could you help me play this mission? I'm kind of, it makes me sick. I mean, heck, even just looking at my brother play it makes me sick. I don't know why. I've been so close before, maybe with a dose of Dramamine, my body will finally allow it, but for now, my brother helps me out with this section of the game. This also means I haven't fully beat Red Dead 2 like ever, so if that makes me a poser, so be it. Like, we're just gonna have to look past this. For some reason, I just can't do it. Now, despite some of the cracks showing with the Dutch Vanderlyn gang, our leader Dutch is fairly optimistic. Arthur and John also start working on a plan to rob a train owned by Leviticus Cornwall, stealing oil wagons to use in the heist. Cut to Strawberry, where Arthur goes on a mission to rescue Micah from the jail, which is one of my favorite missions in this chapter. It's the first time that Micah's recklessness is shown to the player, which also has implications for later on in the game, but the train robbery eventually goes full swing, which is successful, but it does bring a ton of heat from the law, and of course, one Leviticus Cornwall, and it's because of this heat, Dutch makes the decision that the gang's time is done at Horseshoe Overlook, so the gang then decides to move south. Some of the notable side stories are obviously the Lenny mission I spoke about earlier, but then there's the hunting missions with Hosea, which that bear hunting mission is so iconic and it really gives you a small bit of dopamine for all of the hunting that you'll do later on in the game. And how can we forget the fishing, dude? The mission where Arthur takes Jack Marston fishing is one of my favorites. And it's not just because of the addicting fishing minigame. I mean, part of it, a lot of it is because of the fishing minigame, but it also shows how Arthur kind of takes on the role as Jack's protector, aka John Marston's son. As I mentioned earlier, Chapter 2 is really where Red Dead Redemption 2 really opens up in terms of both gameplay, but also storytelling. You get teasers of some of the conflicts and some of the internal struggle that Arthur will face later on. Overall, it's a relatively chill chapter, quite peaceful honestly, but it does a great job of setting up the greater conflict. So after the Cornwall train heist brings the heat, the gang heads to the Heartlands to a camp called Clemens Point. Located in the woods beside a lake in the state of Lemoyne, this section of the game changes the tone again from the freedom of the Wild West to the Heartlands. Do I have a southern draw for some reason? I don't know, guys. I've been playing a lot of Red Dead 2, but okay. Clemens Point is yet another scenic and almost overly quiet location. This chapter has the crew completely caught up in the feud between the Greys and the Braithwaites, and it's Dutch's genius plan to play both sides of the fence. Dutch, Bill, and Arthur travel the roads and are made deputies. Arthur and the rest of the crew take jobs from both families with the goal of showing loyalty to both, but also to neither. A ton of stuff happens in this chapter that are really memorable, from torching the tobacco fields, stealing horses, and just so much. Later on in this chapter, the gang gets into a crossfire at Rhodes, and during that shootout, Sean Maguire is killed, but the events just escalate from there. The Braithwaites decide to retaliate in one of the worst ways possible by kidnapping Jack Marston, which has of course created one of the best moments in this game, the aura-maxing storming of Braithwaite Manor. The gang approaches and pleads with Catherine Braithwaite to tell us where Jack Marston is and give up the boy. The Braithwaites of course refuse and and kicks off a cinematic shootout that is incredible. Like, this is cinema. Catherine Braithwaite refuses to divulge where Jack is, but finally revealed that she gave him over to someone named Angelo Bronte in Saint Denis. This chapter showed us how obsessed Dutch is with proving everyone around him that he's smarter than everyone else, but the 4D chess that Dutch was playing ended up being checkers and it backfired entirely. This of course has the player at odds with Dutch. Arthur questions Dutch, but despite his concerns, his loyalty prevails. Some of my favorite moments in this chapter are the honest mistake mission where the robbery is with Sean and Bill and Uncle that leads to a standoff with the law in the woods. And then there's the mission where Arthur, John, and Javier steal racehorses. There's also the side quest where Arthur helps escaped prisoners, ripping down the signs and roads and giving them food. I really like the depth of chapter 3. Like, you really get the internal like political conflict, and it's just really good. Now chapter 3 is also where you start to see Dutch's plan for paradise isn't going well at all. Arthur starts to realize this, and then there's Sean's death and Jack's kidnapping, which is yet another breaking point from starting out in Lemoyne in a peaceful area to the gang's entire world falling apart. Chapter 3 ends with a trip to Saint Denis where Dutch, Arthur, and Hosea head to the industrial civilization to confront Bronte with the goal of getting Jack back. I love how the end of this chapter really shows you like dipping your toes into the modern civilization and everything feels completely foreign. This brings us to my favorite chapter of this game. It completely changes the vibe of Red Dead 2. You go from the woods to being fully integrated into civilization. After getting Jack back to safety, Dutch decides the best play is to work closely together with Angelo Bronte, but this is where Dutch's ego starts to get really risky. The crew could have gotten Jack back and completely avoided Bronte, but no, not Dutch. Throughout the chapter, you start doing jobs for Bronte, like feeding dead bodies to alligators in swamps, all while Bronte gives us little to nothing in return. Chapter 4, you really start to see Arthur's loyalty and frustration starts to fully crack, and Arthur's blind trust in Dutch is fading rapidly. But Dutch's paranoia wins out in the end, as Dutch has Arthur and John kidnap Bronte and feed him to an alligator in the swamp. I remember this scene so vividly. Like, you really see that Dutch is a madman to go to the extent of feeding the most powerful man in Saint Denis to an alligator in the swamp. The player isn't supposed to be impressed by Dutch here, but love him or hate him, Dutch Vanderlyn has style. Cut to later on in this chapter, this is where things start to get even more dicey. The gang plans to do a big job, the Saint Denis bank heist, which was supposed to be the big payday the gang needed. The Saint Denis job started off without a hitch, but then things quickly escalated as the law was already there waiting, as well as the Pinkertons that got a hold of Hosea and they executed him in the street. John Marston gets arrested, Lenny dies, and the rest of the crew can barely make it out alive. The cinematic chaos of this mission is truly unmatched. It's my favorite mission in the entire game, and honestly, it might just be my favorite heist that Rockstar has done. This is the moment where everything starts to spiral. Arthur's loyalty to Dutch is on the brink, Dutch is in a spiral that shows no sign of stopping, and the world around him is collapsing. Chapter 4 is filled with a lot of positives, from the great questing to the lavish parties at the mayor's mansion. There's kidnapping Bronte and the side quests that give you a sense of the type of corruption happening in the city. This chapter is the moment where the fantasy world that Dutch keeps preaching, the one last score that will bring freedom and paradise, is just that, a pipe dream. The last couple of chapters, you also start to notice that Arthur's cough is getting much worse. The gang is fully falling apart. People are dying. Lenny is dead. Hosea is dead. John Marston is arrested, and just everything is going down in such a crazy way. And then you have Mr. Schizo himself, Dutch, who is paranoid with rage. He's doing one of the worst things possible you can do, and that is putting his blind trust into Micah, a man that Arthur doesn't trust from the start of the game. But with all of the chaos and tragedy, this is the moment where Arthur's redemption starts. His blind faith and loyalty to Dutch has faded. He begins questioning him, and his compassion starts to peek through, which there's a reason why one of the missions in this game has Arthur helping a nun in Saint Denis. Arthur begins to realize that Dutch's idea of triumph isn't real, but there is a different kind of triumph that is worth chasing, one built on kindness, in the hope of doing something good. And with everything around him falling apart, that humanity that the writers were able to so masterfully convey in this act becomes the real story, the triumph of a man trying to find peace before the end. Chapter 4 ends with the attempt to flee the country by boat, but a storm hits and the ship goes under. Arthur wakes up on a beach. After Arthur wakes up from the beach following the disaster that was the Saint Denis bank job, it's yet another shift in tone for this game. You were just in a city amongst civilization, and now Arthur is sunburnt, stranded on a tropical island that just so happens to be in the middle of a revolution. Arthur ends up getting stranded in Gorma. The days of being an outlaw are over, and all that's left is survival. You're caught up in the middle of a war, like a full-blown war is happening around you, and you find yourself fighting alongside a character named Hercule. Your entire objective in Gorma is to try to stay alive, but this is where the division between Arthur and Dutch starts to become really real. Dutch is completely unhinged. Like Arthur said, he's too busy trying to play chess than doing the smart thing, trying to survive. You can really see the tragedy start to weigh heavily on Dutch, who is mourning the loss of life, mainly Hosea. The smart thing for Dutch to do is start to listen to Arthur, but nope, for some reason he thinks Micah has the answers. It gets to the point where Micah is really the only one Dutch listens to. Arthur, on the other hand, is very much awake to the reality of the situation. He somehow finds a way to still do the right thing, even taking on responsibilities, due to Dutch refusing to. You see that the internal frustrations that Arthur has with Dutch are no longer internal. He is pretty blatant with his disregard. This isn't the same Arthur that we used to know. This is a changed man, a redeemed man. What I find so amazing about chapter 5 is how they just kind of throw you into conflict, and it's your job to survive, making your way through gunfights relatively quickly. Our time in Gorma happened pretty abruptly, and it ended in a similar fashion. You get on a boat and sail back to America with the hopes of coming back to a place that isn't as crazy as Gorma, but it's quite the opposite. With John still in prison, the Pinkertons are still after you, Dutch is off his rocker, and that dang cough is getting worse. You could tell that things are clearly not improving. What I love about chapter 5 is how the outlaw fantasy is just a facade and Arthur's personal redemption is on full display. And now we get to chapter 6, where things are quite emotional to say the least. The gang has relocated to a place called Beaver Hollow, which perfectly describes the state of the Vanderlyn gang. A cold and hollow location. The family's fractured. Arthur's cough that has been haunting him for the last few chapters reveals itself to be tuberculosis, and it changes everything. I remember the first time I played through this game and getting the news that Arthur had TB. I think we all collectively pulled up our phone and went to Google and typed in cures for TB, like what is tuberculosis and when was it cured? I remember the collective weight of the situation get really hopeless and almost gruesome. This guy Arthur Morgan was quite reckless throughout the game, taking down countless men, fighting in a freaking revolution, and is not going to die of freaking tuberculosis, man. But from that point on, the fact that Arthur is dying weighed in on every choice. Every waking moment, Arthur's TB looms in the darkness like a juggernaut. Dutch is completely unhinged with Micah right by his side, pushing away all the people who actually cared about him. He refuses to rescue John, who is still rotting away in prison. He lets Miss Grimshaw die and rains hell in on anyone who tries to question him. And this is where Arthur is at his full breaking point. No way will Arthur stand for this. His loyalty is done for. What I really love about this chapter is how Arthur isn't just one of Dutch's yes-men pawns anymore. He's his own man with his own choices. And these choices are presented to the player. Just like the rest of the game, where player choice is at the forefront, the end of the game is also just like that. Chapter 6 has multiple endings based on the honor system that we'll talk later on in the video, but the first ending is what many people consider the canon ending of the game. Arthur Morgan's final act of triumph is by choosing to go help John Marston and getting his family to safety. Arthur then gets into a fight with Micah, but ends up severely wounded. He crawls to the edge of a rocky cliff and he looks out to the sunrise and accepts his fate. Finally, a redeemed man. Seeing Dutch start to turn and look at who he used to call friend, but then walking away, was an experience I will remember for basically my entire life. I remember experiencing this scene for the first time, tears in my eyes, the music rising, and Arthur Morgan, a man who fought to redeem himself, watching him meet his maker not in defeat, but in triumph. Just thinking about this moment, writing this script, and even recording this commentary, like, it's getting me pretty emotional. Like, what a legendary moment. What a amazing character. The redemption that you see right in front of your eyes. It's one of the few times where I've genuinely cried at the loss of a character. I was a bit hesitant at first when I found out that John Marston wasn't going to be the lead of Red Dead 2. And I was like, you know, at odds. I was like, I don't know about this Arthur guy, but something, don't judge a book by its cover. I did, but man, am I glad to be wrong. Now, as I mentioned previously, this isn't the only ending to Red Dead 2. There's actually 4 endings, where the player can choose to either help John or go for the money, both with high and low honor. Each ending stands on its own, but none of the endings are as effective as the high honor ending, where you go and help John. And now we reach the epilogue of the game. At first, it's a bit crazy. Like, for a lot of people, this is the first time in a long time we'd be playing as John Marston in a new Red Dead game. You go from mourning Arthur's death to the beautiful passing of the torch to John. The epilogue isn't just an extended post-game, it's Arthur Morgan's legacy playing out. John is no longer running from the law or chasing one last job. You are building a future, one that Arthur died for. The game from here isn't about survival, it's about finding peace and building towards a brighter future. John gets a job, builds a house with Uncle and Charles. You go to town and deal with various problems. You live a simple and honest life away from all the chaos. At least, that's what we thought. Sadie brings the news that Micah is still alive, and we get yet another tone shift for this game. The final mission brings us to where everything started, the snowy mountains, to finish the job that Arthur started. John finds Micah's hideout, confronts him. Micah gives him a threat that after all this is over, he'd go find Abigail and Jack, which prompts one last outlaw shootout between John and Micah. Sadie pulls up beside Micah, gun in hand. Micah puts his hands up and walks towards John. The door of the cabin then swings open, and the one and only Dutch Vanderlyn walks out, dual wielding. Micah takes Sadie and starts to hold her hostage, and it looks like Dutch is about to shoot John, but quite the opposite. He turns heel and points the gun to Micah and blasts him in the torso. Micah went out with one last bang before John puts Micah down, ending his psychotic reign and putting the past behind him. That is for now. The epilogue ends with John, Abigail, and Jack on the ranch on the land that he built, and that's the beauty of this ending. The final triumph of Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't about freedom or glory or even revenge. It's about redemption that is earned. And at the end of it all, Arthur may have lost, but through John Marston, he won. I'd like to take this time to kind of shift gears and talk about what makes Red Dead Redemption 2 a timeless masterpiece: the gameplay. From the mission structure to the combat mechanics to the honor system, this was the aspect of this game that I was most curious to see how it holds up, so let's dive in. So first things first, I'd like to talk about the overall mission structure. Red Dead 2 took what worked on the original game but fully expanded it. The first Red Dead had strong storytelling, but it kept the missions pretty straightforward. For this game, Rockstar took quite a big leap forward, offering a dynamic approach to the direction, with missions that are also quite diverse. The variety and pacing of the missions went from quite tense moments to explosive gunfights and epic chase scenes that look like they're coming straight from an action movie. To put it simply, the missions in Red Dead 2 made you feel like an outlaw in the West with the exaggerated swagger of a middle-aged man. The structure gives you a sense of narrative flow that not many games are able to accomplish. Some of these standout missions for me that I briefly covered in the story portion of this video. The big one being the Saint Denis bank heist mission, which is one of my favorite missions in this game. But I think objectively speaking, with my bias for heisting aside, the best mission in this game is the Blood Feuds Ancient and Modern. This mission is a beautiful showcase of the game's ability to weave intense combat with emotional storytelling and world building. The growing escalation with the Braithwaites ended in a fiery blaze of gunfire. The mechanics for this mission also shine really well. The gunplay and cover system make every time you shoot at somebody in the distance feel impactful. I still picture the burning of Braithwaite Manor, like the gang's aura was truly unforgettable. But as I said, this is just a couple. The game has so many incredible missions, but it's not just the main missions that shine either. The side missions are at its absolute best in this game. Unlike many other open world games where the side missions are often just filler missions with fetch quests and stuff like that, in Red Dead Redemption 2, they are all paced to pull you into the world deeper. The characters you meet aren't just there to pad playtime. The stories in these side missions leave a lasting impression. And then there's the side activities like hunting legendary animals, hunting for treasure, and doing a bit of degen gambling on poker. And we can't forget the fishing. The fishing in this game had me so addicted that the first time I did it, I legitimately stayed there for an hour, not realizing that I could fish for as long as I wanted. I genuinely thought there was like a threshold I had to meet to continue the mission, but apparently I was just fishing forever. The activities in this game help elevate the lived-in feel of Red Dead 2. Like, once you take a step back and kind of immerse yourself, you'll really understand how masterfully crafted this world is. Now let's dive into the actual movement and combat mechanics for this game, which is a hotly debated topic amongst the community. And that's even all the way back when it released in 2018. And it's a criticism that is levied against most other Rockstar titles. And that is the somewhat sluggish, or I guess clunky feel that the gameplay has and the controls have. And revisiting the game recently, I get it. The gameplay isn't everyone's cup of tea. Could it be better? Yes. But it's a unique identity that is synonymous with Rockstar games, and changing it would almost remove that Rockstar DNA from the game itself. If you take away the randomness of the gameplay, you risk removing some of the appeal of the overall experience. So for me, I don't see this as a negative. The combat itself feels visceral and incredibly satisfying, especially when you understand how the game works. But I can see for some people it can be a bit frustrating with gameplay and just movement that can feel kind of heavy almost. But again, that is the point. It's literally there to get you immersed in the moment-to-moment gameplay. When you miss your shot because your character is moving really weird or slow, it elevates the intensity, which I think is a very deliberate system that Rockstar does. Despite how it might be annoying to deal with, at times Arthur's actions feel weighty and, just realistic. But despite the clunky feel, the combat doesn't miss a beat due to Deadeye, which I'll just say this, there aren't many gameplay mechanics in games that hit as good as Deadeye. Literally. The feeling of lining up shots in slow motion hits different, and it's so satisfying to take down enemies with ease, all while you're almost like dancing and fighting against Arthur's movement. It's like a push and pull system. Another aspect of this game will affect how your journey plays out is the honor system. Red Dead Redemption 2 took the established morality system for Red Dead 1 and added a lot of nuance. Every choice that Arthur makes, from a minor interaction with people in town to a big decision made in missions, all impacts Arthur's honor rating. What I like about Red Dead 2's honor system is how well it's integrated into the gameplay and story. High honor will do things like give you positive interactions, discounts, or even like kinder reactions by people, while low honor results in hostility, dialogue that is quite rough, and distrust amongst the interactions you have. The honor system also reinforces the internal struggle that Arthur is dealing with, adding weight to every decision you make, but also giving consequences to those actions. The morality slider is a system that I really wish more games would implement. Hogwarts Legacy, yes, I'm talking about you. Although other games aren't Rockstar, and Red Dead Redemption for that matter. Now this is the perfect segue to the realism aspect of this game. Red Dead Redemption 2, till this day, is one of the most realistic video games I have ever played. It is unapologetic in being a realistic video game. Guns degrade and need maintenance if you don't stay clean or shave or eat right. Dress for the weather or care for your horse will all negatively affect or positively affect your character. And it's elements like these that really force you to pay attention to the open world around you. You're not just some random NPC in the world, or surrounded by random NPCs either. These elements force players to connect with the world and character. It's also not realism for the sake of realism. It's realism with purpose. It keeps you grounded in Arthur's everyday experience. These gameplay components further reinforce why Red Dead Redemption 2 is still celebrated all these years later. While I won't lie, some of the mechanics haven't aged in the greatest, like the movement, the game's mission structure, side quests, activities, honor system, and the immersive realism ensure that even today, after my 100+ hour playthrough, Red Dead Redemption 2's gameplay remains not just enjoyable, but genuinely addictive and unforgettable. The open world of Red Dead Redemption 2 is nothing short of flawless. It is a living, breathing frontier, an ecosystem so incredibly detailed and dynamic, honestly, that it feels like a character of its own. From the snowy peaks of Ambarino to the swamps of Lemoyne, every aspect of Red Dead Redemption 2 feels meticulously crafted, all with purpose. And this open world is a testament to the game engine, the Rage engine, that allows for it to be so beautifully crafted. And it's not just because the open world is big, but it's also densely packed full of content. Like, you can just be riding for a long time through a forest on the way to Valentine, or stumble across something, or like a random stranger that needs help because they're poisoned. It just feels so natural, and the open world just feels so lived in. There's not many devs that can tell a narrative based on world building, but Rockstar is able to do it flawlessly. They've always been able to do it for like a long time. Other developers like Nintendo with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, they do a great great job at telling the story through the open world, and just the design, the structures that are placed, it just all fits in. And the way that the world shifts from the time of day with the weather systems that are dynamic is also just so staggering. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I just like stop with my horse and just look at all of the setting and just like see the volumetric clouds and the beautiful sunset or sunrise. And they're not just backdrops, they literally change the way you play the game. If it's raining, your horse will struggle in the mud. The rivers start to rise because of heavy rain, fog happens to obscure your vision. And then there's the diverse wildlife with so many different species roaming the land. You could be hunting in the game and then suddenly get ambushed by another creature, or seeing the detail of birds that scatter as storms roll in. Like, dude, it's such an incredible system. You could stumble across an NPC literally chopping down a tree and he does everything. Like, you could see every aspect of the tree chopping. You could even like follow a dude in the town who's building a roof and he's literally like taking the wood and just like minding his own business and walking towards his destination. It all just feels so realistic. But what I think truly sets Red Dead Redemption 2's open world apart from everything else is how it ties into the themes of the game's story. It's not just some empty world, it's a reflection of Arthur's journey. You see the Wild West that starts to fade with the industrialization of Saint Denis encroaching on the rest of civilization. Towns are growing and just everything feels like it's all happening so fast. And even after multiple 100-hour playthroughs, I still find new things in this world, new details that I discover, new locations that I've like never seen before. It almost feels like when I stop playing the game, the NPCs are still in the world and they're still like building the civilization and just like growing things. And I get back out there and I'm like, I have never seen this before, but I'm happy I stumbled across it. The game doesn't just have an open world, it's a living and breathing world. And that's why after all these years later, there's not many other games that are able to do it like Red Dead Redemption. It is a masterpiece in immersion. The game has an insane level of detail that I don't know how they pulled it off. The fact that this game released in 2018 and then we have, you know, GTA 6 coming out next year allegedly, which has had an even crazier development cycle. I can't even imagine how detailed that open world is going to be, but one thing is for certain, Red Dead Redemption 2 is the standard. Red Dead Redemption 2 is an experience that lingers with you for years. A story about loyalty, tragedy, and redemption all wrapped up in a beautifully cruel world. A game that dared to be slow with realism that is unmatched, and it's because of that it was able to achieve something that most games never will. It makes you feel like you lived in this world. From Arthur Morgan's final moment of triumph to John Marston's pursuit of peace with his family, all these years later, it stands as Rockstar Games' magnum opus, a testament to what video games can be when they are treated with care and compassion. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a singular piece of art, a triumph that will be remembered through history as one of the greatest video games ever created.